Welcome to Teaching Truth. Journey's End. That's been the theme for our reflections this week as we've journeyed with Joseph through the narrative and through the events of Genesis chapter 50. And now we come with Joseph to the end of his journey. Let's read of the end of that journey from Genesis chapter 50, verses 22 through to 26. Let's read God's word together. So Joseph remained in Egypt, he and his father's house. Joseph lived 110 years, and Joseph saw Ephraim's children of the third generation. The children also of Machir, the son of Manasseh, were there, counted as Joseph's own. And Joseph said to his brothers, I am about to die, but God will visit you and bring you up out of this land to the land that he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. Then Joseph made the sons of Israel swear, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones from here. So Joseph died, being 110 years old. They embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt. Joseph has reached his journey's end. Joseph has lived for 110 years. And Joseph, in living for 110 years, has lived and has been blessed to see his great grandchildren. What a blessing that must have been, not only to see his sons and his grandchildren, but his great grandchildren too, to see the generations which would come after him. It would seem that Joseph dies at least before some of his older brothers. For Joseph says to his brothers, I am about to die. Joseph knew that he was at his journey's end. Joseph knew he was approaching, as it were, Penzance. But God will visit you and bring you up out of this land that he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. Joseph refused to be buried in Egypt, the same request that his father Jacob had made. He wanted to be buried in the land of Canaan. Now, this would indicate that he expected his body to be fully decomposed by the time it was brought up, because he says, carry up my bones. Note the words very particularly. Carry up my bones. Joseph didn't say, carry up my embalmed body. He says, carry up my bones. Joseph didn't want to be embalmed. And that request was honoured. How do we know that, Bill? We know that because in Exodus 13:19, we're told that Moses, that other great Old Testament character, took what? He took the bones of Joseph with him on his way out of Egypt. Joseph dies, and he's put in a coffin in Egypt. Now, normally when we put someone in a coffin, they're either cremated, or if they are buried, we put them 6 foot under. But Joseph wasn't buried. He was just put in a coffin. Why was that? Well, I believe that was because generations of Israelites would be able to look at his coffin as a reminder of the promise to return to Canaan. See, this was faith, and it was meant to stir up faith in others. In other words, Joseph is saying, here's what you should do with my body. Joseph is essentially saying, because I have faith in God's promise to return this family to the land of Canaan, as you look, not at my body as such, but as you look at the coffin where my body is, you can have faith in God's promise to bring us back out of exile. I've said on many occasions through these studies that Joseph can be likened to Jesus in so many ways. And as we look, as it were, on the body of Jesus, the scars and hands in his feet, as we'll think about next week at Easter time, it should stir up, and it certainly does stir up in my heart, that sense of faith and hope that he will one day come and take us, as it were, out of our Egypt, out of exile, into the land that he has promised, into that new creation that he has promised, that new Jerusalem. For the next several hundred years, as far as we can tell, the Israelites will look at Joseph's coffin. They will look at Joseph's coffin and anticipate the day when they will carry his coffin to the promised land. Joseph's final words point not just the people at the time, but us in the here and now, to the future promises of God and the promise that Jesus one day will return to take us to that land flowing with milk and honey, spiritually speaking. That land where he wants us to be, that promised land. Let me read once again the closing verses of Genesis 50. So Joseph died, being 110 years old. They embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt. As Joseph was placed in that coffin in Egypt, the life, the legacy, the character and the witness of Joseph lived on for many, many generations to come. Will your legacy, will your testimony, will your character live on after you're placed in your coffin for many, many generations to come? Next week in Teaching Truth, we'll look at the comparison between Joseph and Jesus, which we see in so many ways. The Jesus, as we anticipate Easter and travel through Holy Week. The Jesus who wants to take us to our promised land. Join me next week in Teaching Truth for our final week of reflections as we look at the life and the ministry and the legacy of Joseph. God bless you.